This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 28th of August, 2019, and I am 2J.
I am 2M.
And I am Miss K, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines.
Did you guys know that 56 years ago today, Martin Luther King gave his prolific I Have a Dream speech?
I didn't know that.
28th of August, 1963.
Wow.
Yep.
Now you know. This week's headlines. The Standard. Soccer star caught up in Uhuru Ruto party wars.
Wow.
The Star. Ruto tells of RAILA over referendum. And Daily Nation. RAILA bid to save Knut as more teachers flee. I say we look at them together for this reason. Today I feel like the papers were divided. They looked at RAILA's three battlegrounds and they put them up for us. Kibra, referendum, education.
I know, it's
Let's
interesting.
deal with them.
I have two questions, especially on this one.
Okay. The Daily Nation.
Daily Nation. Question number one. How is he saving it? Is he putting a bolt inside the nut?
Oh gosh, that's a terrible joke. Please. All right, now ask your real question.
Yes.
And second one, is Raila Odinga now Superman? He's saving everybody.
If you have a problem with Mao, come see Raila. I shall take you to Huru. If you have a problem with Sosion, come see Raila. I shall fix it.
He's becoming a point of reference for everybody. But then also this is very curious to me. I have never seen Raila going to save a union leader. But then I ask, why did Sosion become an ODM nominated member of parliament? There must have been a reason.
That's a good question.
Interesting question.
So, of course, the context here is that 18,000 teachers have ditched NUT in favor of KUPPET, which I think is quite dangerous because I think having any teachers potentially leaving one position for another, knowing that when teachers strike, they can stop the whole country from operating. I think that somebody needs to put a stop to this because it could get very dangerous. Whether or not Raila is going to be the saving, the savior of it all, I don't know.
No, at the end of it is good. NUT has been a very good taxpayer for KRA, and now KUPPET will be. Now, you just making one order fall and then raising another. What's the problem? Life will continue.
Who's the recipient of those payments apart from KRA?
I have not. Oh, okay.
We have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves two questions. Is this headline topical or is it speculative? Is it repetitive or is it groundbreaking? And finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I see you've put it in the parking bay. Is there a reason for that?
Because we're looking at them together, are we not?
Okay, fine. Let's look at them together.
I want to look at the Standard one because that one is...
Soccer star caught up in Uhuru Ruto party wars.
What does a football star, Ruto and Uhuru, have in common?
The empty seat of Kibra and that he wants to run. No, actually, we don't know if he wants to run because he's not picking up his calls and he's not said whether or not he wants to run. But we do know this, that a list of nominees was presented to IEBC and we do know this. It was rejected. Apparently, it's fake news.
Let me tell you, I bite. There was a scheme and I gave you my stolen idea yesterday.
Yes, you did.
There's a scheme. And the scheme is from the top of Jubilee. And it's a great scheme. You feel this candidate, Raila could say, okay, you're undermining the handshake, okay? You don't feel the candidate.
The people will say you will actually just let him
and
win.
especially, especially if a useless candidate wins, you know? But then you flip it now and then ask, if this Mariga guy runs, you know, and he wins, and there's a guy who has no idea, in my view, he has no idea he's a candidate, that would be a win for Uhuru. But then I also want to say another thing. There's a guy called Bernard Otieno.
Your ideas are very higgledy-piggledy today.
What does that mean?
It just means that they're all over the place. They're very Madagodanio there. But it's fine. Proceed.
No. Madagodanio people are genius.
All right.
I thought you had a better job for her. Weren't you going to say something about locution?
Oh, yeah. She's circumlocucious.
All right. Finish your point.
Now, what I was saying is this. There is the former MP, late MP of Kibra, and his name was Ken Okoth.
Yeah.
And he's a dynasty in himself because he was the ringleader there. Now, I want to say that we support the candidature of his brother. And I think his brother is called Bernard Okoth.
Yes.
Let's keep
keep
the
it in the
leadership
family.
in the blood, in the blood of family.
Agreed.
But we said that there's nothing wrong with families and heritages in politics. That is how the world runs.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Dynasties are not necessarily bad.
No, so what about the Star?
So what do you say about this headline?
I like it. I'm going to toss the Daily Nation in favor of the Standard.
Okay.
Yes.
Ruto tells off RAILA over referendum. As we said yesterday, referendums are good things. And constitutions are living documents. And I have to remember, do you know we promulgated our constitution yesterday in 2010? 27th of August.
Yes.
Yeah. Many years ago.
Yeah. But then I'm finding this a little bit dangerous, especially on the part of William Ruto. Uhuru Kenyatta on Saturday says, I support a referendum. Raila Odinga on Sunday says, I support a referendum. On Monday, William Ruto says, I don't support a referendum. I don't think William Ruto is fighting Raila Odinga. I think he has a bigger target.
That sounds very speculative.
That's Uhuru Kenyatta.
Oh, okay. Should just come out and say it. Okay. I think it's speculative as well. I also do not like this headline because I feel like it's very similar to what we saw yesterday. So I think we...
And that makes the Standard our winning headline?
By default.
Another winning headline from the Standard.
On
to our next segment, the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask ourselves, is a cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain lazy? Let's start with Gado. Who's gone international again?
He's still on his sabbatical.
I love this, and I love this especially because of the context.
Okay.
But before I say it, analyze it. Let me describe it. Caricature of Brazilian President Bolsonaro, and he's playing a violin.
Yeah.
And the background is the Amazon burning.
Yeah.
And the caption is Bolsonaro fiddled with while the Amazon burns. And the tunes are the climate change denial. Context of this, what's his name? Macron, French president. He told the Brazilians he will give them $20 million.
Well, rather, the G7 countries pledged to give $20 million dollars.
They'll do a harambe and then they sort out the fires in Brazil. And I like what the Brazilian president told Macron. He told him to bugger off. He doesn't need his $20 million. Something about his wife.
But then he proceeded to say that his wife was more attractive than Macron's wife, which I think was just a low blow. I don't think that was necessary.
It's a really low blow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at it this way. This guy, I'm sure he knows, those fires underneath, if the forest vamooses, there are things underneath the earth that Brazil can be able to exploit. What is $20 million for?
I don't think that's how climate change works.
It's not about climate change.
True.
It's not about climate change in my view. I think Brazil wants to exploit its resources, natural resources.
So let the fires burn. Let's see what it exposes.
Absolutely.
Let's dig it up and let's sell it.
And you see, Brazil is almost getting to a first world country. They make embryos, for goodness sake. They're part of BRICS. You know?
That would be so wonderful if we were able to breathe oxygen while we also made the money.
I think that's
Let's lose the Amazon, let's lose our oxygen, then we can be rich in death.
There's a guy called Sang, a Rift Valley MP, who said, oxygen and rain come from God.
Toss it, please, JJ.
I have no comment for that at all. All right, ozone.
This guy, Pastor Nganga. And caricature of Pastor Nganga, and he's on a pulpit, but the pulpit is like it's
off a cliff.
It's off a cliff.
It's hanging precariously.
And his congregation is a flock, and he's abusing them. He says, see, in lavish, ngombe.
Yeah.
But the flock looks too scared to move. And
but at the same time, he needs them in order to not fall off the cliff.
Absolutely.
And they also don't understand that they have the power to get rid of him as he abuses them.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is testament to what is happening in our churches. There are people who call their pastors dad and mom.
Yeah.
And you know, they give them all kind of money to.
If I'm being honest, I must be the only person in Kenya who does not understand the hold that this man has over people and why we continue to talk about him when we know, I mean,
because his videos go viral.
I mean, Ozone is making fun of him. We know he's a bit of a clown. So can we just accept it and stop talking about him?
Okay, fine then.
Those are my 2 cents.
Toss it then. Although I have to say that the yo-yo, every day you go from a really excellent cartoon to one that's like so.
Lula.
He's walking that thin line. You know that thin line? The thin line between offensive and funny.
Okay, you say this.
Oh, wow. Why?
And this is why he's walking that thin line.
Okay, so we have a drawing of a pig with a tattoo that says graft. And as we said before, when you have that heart tattoo, it is a thing that you love.
Of course.
Being nursed by a bottle of oil. which is coming from somebody who we can only assume is government, right?
Yes.
And the pig is saying, wait your turn, and behind him is a starving Kenyan child, we can assume, yeah. There, I've described it. I think it's funny. It is, as like crude as it is, I think it's...
What I find really sad is the way in which that pig is just holding that
bottle
for dear life.
And being nuzzled by government, like it's the full-on baby.
Yeah, the context here, of course, is that 1.2 billion that we're set to receive, up against the joint ventures program, which is then supposed to disseminate some of that money to the people who live in that area. So I think that is the point here. Who's going to get paid first?
The context of this is also this. You see, that this all exploitation is an experiment, and it's meant to last for about...
It was our winning headline yesterday. Please remember, we're going with positivity.
Yeah, it's about 24 months. Oil. Now, and I've told you, this oil is not enough for people to make profit.
Yeah.
And you could see post guys hanging around the president saying, oh, sisi tunataka shingo, sisi tunataka mbavu. Everybody wants a piece of this. And yet, it cannot be able to feed people where the oil is coming from.
So what do you say?
I like it because it, as negative as it is, it's casting a light on something that we know is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I agree.
Do we then make it our winning cartoon?
You don't lavish?
Nope. And we have a winning cartoon from Victor de Love, the Daily Nation. What is our final thought today?
And now, our final thought. And it's inspired by the theme of today, and is can monetary prizes spur innovation? Junie?
Yeah. So I think this week we've talked about a lot of innovations that were either rejected or the hard way in which they had to become normal.
Right.
And so today we're going to talk about whether it is a good thing or a bad thing to pay people
to innovate.
Yeah, to innovate, to spur innovation. Yeah. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is probably the first historical evidence of this.
Yes.
In 1714, the British Parliament offered a huge prize of £20,000 to anyone who could find a way to determine longitude at sea.
Yes.
So I'm going to take us back to geography class for a minute. I hear that was your favorite. You were the best.
No one could beat me in that.
Okay, therefore, because no one could beat you, do you want to describe for us what latitude is and what longitude is?
I will mark her right or wrong.
Okay, right. So global position is described by two coordinates, latitude and longitude. Yeah. And these are measured in degrees.
Yes.
So the lines of latitude measure north and south, and they run parallel to the equator. And the lines of longitude run pole to pole and measure east to west.
Yeah.
So what was happening at this time is you have the ships in Europe who are going out, they're exploring, there's lots of trade going on.
It was actually the golden era of the ship. That was the best way to be transport or move around the world.
Goods. Yes. But you have this problem whereby they're unable to determine or find out where they are. So you'd have lots of ships who would arrive at the docks of the sea and crash right into it because they didn't know that it was arriving at them. Yeah. So, and this is because latitude is very easy to measure. Yes. You look up at the sun and the sun will help you determine where you are. You will look up and if it's at right above you, you can tell where you are and it helps you do that. Yeah. Longitude is a lot harder to determine.
Yes.
So most solutions at the time were based on time differences. So you would get on the ship and you would carry a watch with you. And you would know that, for example, if I leave New York at midday and New York is 8 hours behind London and I carry that clock with me, 8 hours later I know that I am this far away from London.
Yes.
But the problem with that is clocks at the time were based on pendulum. So that ticking motion was based on a pendulum.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, based on the motion of the ocean, the pendulum would get distorted because of that.
Absolutely.
And also the inside parts of the clocks were made from materials that were very porous. So they would be subjected to expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction, and that would change the time. So when you got to the place you thought you were getting to, the time actually
is completely wrong.
Absolutely.
So that was one of the solutions. Yes. The second one was started by King Charles II in 1675. So at the time you had the Royal Observatory and they believed that astronomers could help you determine those things based on the moonlight, the stars, the skies, the planets, all manner of witchcrafty things, right? So he formed the Royal Observatory in 1675 to see how the stars could help with this problem. So the observatory was built in this area in the UK called Greenwich, and that is why we now have what we know as the Greenwich time zone. That's how it originated.
No, my GHC teacher told me it is Greenwich.
It's okay. Potato. Besides, we said it came to this continent
on a boat. It's fine. So you have these two possible solutions, but they're not very effective at telling the longitude or the latitude or helping people determine where they are at sea. So this is how this prize comes about. They say we're going to give the problem to the public and we're going to let them come up with a solution, and we're going to offer them £20,000. And so you have a few people who come up with some solutions, but then you have this one man named John Harrison.
Who had no formal education. His father was just a workman, and he was essentially a clockmaker.
He was a clockmaker. This man knew nothing. So they always assumed that it was going to be an astrologer who came up with the solution.
Absolutely.
Because if you were the educated people of the time, and they're the ones who were able to use the stars to be able to tell time.
If you can, they could read the witchcraft in the sky, so they thought that they'd be the ones to do it. But this man, John Harrison, says, you know what, I think the clock is a good idea. I'm just going to make it better. So what he does is, with almost within 2 years, he comes up with a solution for this prize. And he refuses to submit it to the panel.
Because he was sort of a perfectionist, and he wanted to fix it in a way in which he knew was absolutely perfect.
So this guy waits 20 years. 20 whole years before he decides to present his idea to the panel. And when he does, it is actually perfection. To this day, what this man developed is what we still use today.
And we call it the chronometer.
Exactly.
But guys, I like you've passed.
Okay, thank you.
But here's the thing. I don't believe that monetary prize was the influence that this guy needed to come up with that solution. And if it was, he would have done it immediately. Let me tell you guys. Have you guys heard of this thing called AK-47?
Yes. The gun.
The gun. The gun was made by a man called Mikhail Kalashnikov. That's why it's called Kalashnikov. That's why the gun is called Kalashnikov. It's called 47 because it was a 47th model that he made, but also I think it was made in 1947. Now, the guy who used to drive tanks back in the Russian army, and he created this gun. He was a gun designer. He created a gun that did not have much recoil. See, when you
shoot a gun, the recoil.
It recoils all the time like this. But he made a gun that could not recoil, had less recoil, and could be used in water.
It was basically perfect for any terrain.
It was perfect for any terrain.
It wouldn't jam up. It wouldn't have any of the problems that other guns at that time had.
Absolutely. And this guy gave this gun to his country, right? Because to the Soviet Union, because he felt hell-bound to give it to them because he was doing it for service. And then there's a man who created M16. I don't even know his name.
That's another gun.
It's an American rifle. He made a lot of money from it. All right.
So much so that he's gone into hiding.
Perhaps, right? I mean, the point is this: maybe monetary gain, it will spur some innovation, but there's a reason why this guy did not. He probably just wanted a model. A medal from the British Empire.
But here's the thing, and you have to bear in mind that war is always a good motivator for you to give something, and maybe that's what Kalashnikov was thinking when he made this gun and gave it to the Soviet Union. But at that time in the 1700s, Britain was a big naval powerhouse, and if war was one of their incentives for fixing it, then they would have fixed it before. But there is something to be said about the giving of prize money and the creation of a community of interest, people who understand the problem and want to fix it.
Exactly.
So
one of the most recent ones that we've seen, because this idea has not died. In fact, it's actually grown. It's called a $315 billion industry. This giving of prize monies for the solution of for solving solutions. And the biggest one right now is called DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and it is part of the U.S. Defense Department of Defense.
Now we all know DARPA, but we don't know DARPA. But what we should know about DARPA is that DARPA is the one that came up with the internet.
Exactly. So what they do is that they're responsible for developing technologies for military use, and their hope is to develop them sooner than those who will use them against the U.S. So the U.S. pays people to come up with ideas that they themselves would then use against other people before they can use it against them. So it was created in 1958 by President Eisenhower in response to the Soviets launching the Sputnik. So that was at the height of the space race. So that was in 1957. So DARPA, as you said, they funded lots of projects. They came up with the internet, they came up with GPS, lots of interesting things that we do not know much about.
But use now.
And I think it really does beg the question, as you're saying, should we be paying people to come up with innovations?
And I think, yes, we should. But we also have to understand, and I do have to also agree with you a little bit to that their motivation in the end is not necessarily the money when it comes to solving the problem.
Can I give you guys an interesting prize that I came across?
Please do.
It is called the Mo Ibrahim Prize. That is existing existed since 2006. I think you guys are familiar with it, right? Created by Sudanese billionaire and philanthropist. And it celebrates African leadership or excellence in African leadership. And it is given to former heads of states, those who have developed their countries, and it supports leadership. And so it gives a $5 million prize. On get-go. But then thereafter, you receive $200,000 every year until the day you die.
What?
So since 2006, it has existed for 5 years, right? So in 2007, they gave it to the Mozambican former president, Chisano. In 2008, they gave it to former president of Botswana, Mo Gai. In 2009 and 10, there was no prize.
Why?
Because they said that there were no leaders who adequately
sufficiently met the
criteria, which I thought was quite interesting. And then in 2011, they gave it to the Cape Verde president, and since then they've kind of gone quiet. And so
because there's nobody worthy of winning it.
I don't know if that's necessarily true.
If I was Uhuru Kenyatta, I would not want to win it. What are the chances I could make $20 million and I wait to get another prize of $5 million?
I don't know.
But you get paid ad infinitum till the day you die.
No, but I probably make more.
Well, anyway, I have to go back and say that the thing that is important about prizes is that they create a community of interest. And one of the things that those people who actually solve these problems do is that they're looking for recognition. So a lady wrote a book about the solving of the longitudinal problem, and she said that if you were to go into Harrison's mind and try to figure out what his motivation was for fixing the problem, it was 90% because the problem existed, 10% because of the money.
Let me ask you, 2 years making a clock that could not, swing in the seas. Do you think it really took him a lot of time?
No, it didn't, but he wanted to fix the problem sufficiently. And mostly he wanted recognition. And did you know that it actually took him a really long time to actually get that recognition?
I'm glad you say that, because a man called Paul Allen, who was there was a prize to create a self-driving car, all right? And the prize there was $10 million. But Paul Allen used $26 million, $16 million more than the prize money. Did he do it because of prize money?
No, he did it to fix the problem.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's just what it is. People want to solve problems. They're not always looking for the money.
As Prof says, identify a problem and the money will follow you. Why? Because money follows good solutions.
Okay, I agree. Because it came from Prof.
This is Winning Headlines. Today we had a winning headline from The Standard and we had a winning cartoon from Victor Dula of the Daily Nation. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and if you're watching us, know that we are on your television stations at home. Take a moment to look for us. We're on Pan, Free to Air, GoTV and Star Times. Have a great day. Don't forget to innovate even when there's no money. See you tomorrow.